Welcome back to this month's Real Estate Roundtable, your all-in-one comprehensive view of what's happening across the real estate industry, straight from some of the industry's earliest technology adopters and foremost experts in technology, marketing, capital, construction, and cybersecurity. As always, this is a three-part show. Part one, introductions, what's happening with each of our roundtable hosts. Part two, a sector focus, paradigm shifts. What is the biggest change or news in their spaces? And part three, what does it really mean for your business? What can you do over the next 30 days to continue to thrive? I'm Andreas Senie, founder, CRECollaborative, brokerage owner, and technology growth strategist. And joining me this month is none other than Saul Klein, founder of Realtown, Futurist, strategist, trainer, speaker, car wash owner, and future economic indicator presenter. Saul, nice to have you back.
Always good to be back.
All right. Rebekah Carlson, president and CEO of Carlson Integrated, past president of NICAR Association, and my favorite marketing maven. That's their tagline. Rebekah, nice to be back from Europe. Some new tips and new tricks, I hope.
Glad to be here. Thank you, Andreas.
And joining us all the way from one of the Great Lakes this month, Maria Kowalik. Welcome back. SVP, Director of Business Development, Inland Green Capital. All things green, C-Pace, construction. Anna, welcome.
That's right. Thank you very much. And being that I'm coming to you from the lakes of Minnesota, I missed having 4th of July, but this is 4th of July week here all over. But back home, there was a horrible tragedy in Highland Park. And so I'd just like to ask for a moment of silence just in honor of those who lost their lives. Thank
Absolutely.
you.
Okay. And last but not least, and Chris Abel, Director of Membership at the Connecticut Associated Builders and Contractors. All things construction, one of my favorite people to talk to here about the Northeast, education, and really labor and what's the nitty gritty, the building of it all. Chris, welcome back.
Absolutely. Happy to be here, as always.
Thank you, Chris. A special congratulations to Professor Darren Hayes for his anniversary. He will not make it this evening. He's busy at home, taking some needed rest. With that, thank you guys, as always, for tuning in. We have a great show lined up for you. Cannot wait to talk about the economic trends, the different things that are happening. Starting, as usual, with you, Saul. What's going on with this car wash? Let's start there, and we'll lift off.
You know, you got me looking at this stuff more carefully now. and so years ago, when we went from just a coin changer to taking credit cards, that was a major change. And what we then could see is which stalls did the best, what time of day they did the best. This is real interesting, right? Now, could we do things to enhance one stall over another? If we blocked one, right? So we could do all these things because we had information that we never had before. Well, now, got me looking at this, you know, I always know that when it does better and when it doesn't, but I never really bother to correlate anymore why it might not and what I can do about it, right? So I sent you some financials on the car wash. So this is the time of year that the car wash is better. As with many businesses, it's seasonal. Time of year is better than the other time of year. So when you look at month after month, month to month, or back a year, that's what we look at. How did we do last July or last June, last May? How do we do this May, this June? And so the trend has to be, and when I looked at the numbers, I shared them with you, that it was up, right? And they were up about 10, 12%, as a matter of fact. Now, what can I attribute that to? And I want to say, you know what? When the car wash business is up, what's happening with inflation? Are there any correlations here? What's happening with home sales? What's happening with vacancies? And somehow can I tie that car wash, some factors from car wash, which are, you know, kind of blue collar folks, working folks, living in apartment buildings. Is there any correlation that we can establish with maybe being able to forecast economically? So I would tell you that the car wash business is looking good. Is that good or bad? Well, it tells you more people are washing their cars. We increased the prices a couple months ago. It hasn't been affected. Again, we're up over 12%. So things are good at the car wash, and business is good. That also means the sun is shining. And that is a major factor in owning a car wash.
Well, you're in the right location. I hesitate to say it. California is great for car washes. Great, a great business considerably. As the owner, a cash business, and I think you touched on a great point. You said you now have the ability to monitor and look into things, and that's really where the industry's gone. It's realizing that, hey, Tuesday's my slow day. Let me put a discount out there and marketing it out. And correlating that just right over to real estate. What assets, what markets, where can I do better? Where can I shore up my business, even if it's prospecting?
Because you can look at the data. Whether or not you take the time to look at the data, that's another story, right? But we know now that you can make intelligent, better, smarter decisions because information is available to you that's never been available before.
That's true.
Maybe it's been available, but much more difficult to get your hands on.
I often would say that we are in the luckiest point with technology because the technology is there to go get as much business as we want, if you're willing to do the work. You can go knock on doors, you can let your fingers do the walking, you can find the information. Those putting it out there, of course, being the marketers out there getting it right in front of us all the time, such as Rebekah, Carlson. Are you in shock returning to the U.S. now that we're welcome back?
There's no place like home. So my daughter and I had a wonderful vacation, and as expected, it always triggers marketing ideas. I actually, if this marketing thing doesn't work for me, I'm going to be a food importer. 100%. I had some wonderful snacks that I can't find here, including, and I can't believe I'm telling everybody this because I think this is the most genius snack in the world. We were on a train going to Berlin, and there was this pretzel. And then you bit into it. It was filled with butter, which is maybe not like the healthiest snack, but it was delightful. It was the best pretzel I've ever had in my life. And it was like a mass-produced in plastic snack that they were just handing out as, local fare. Like I said, if marketing doesn't work out, I've got a second career lined up. Third career. I don't.
Oh, it's fantastic. Look, food, well, you're a foodie, so I can say that, right? Is everybody on the call a foodie relatively? But it being in Europe, did you notice any similarities to our markets? Anything going on there that you want to jump out at us besides the vacation spots and the food while we're talking?
So I would say that there are, and we were in a number of capitals and major cities. So it was a Baltic cruise. So we visited no fewer than 9 cities in 10 days. The development differs depending on the cities. There are factors that we haven't ever had to consider, like rebuilding after World War II. So the span of architecture over a vast period of time is considerably different than we experience here in the US. But it is great to see cranes. It's great to see commerce working. It was wonderful to see the sea transport and things like that. Obviously, there's then been some impact, and the impact of the Ukrainian and Russian war is considerable. We were in Poland for one of those days, but it also was really neat to speak with our guide in Helsinki about how they're integrating families already into the school system, how the refugees are really being welcomed and experiencing a new home. So those pieces, right? Whenever you have population increase, there are going to be real estate needs.
Mm-hmm. Well,
but retail follows rooftops. That's what I always learned.
Oh, that's a good one. I'm going to borrow that one. But you touched on it, World War, of course, paradigm shifts. So the paradigm shift, not just COVID. Here, COVID, that's the big, but there, of course, the Ukrainian war. Right. And it sounds like you did see cranes. Were those unfinished products because of labor shortages? I don't know. But I know, Chris, you and I touched a bit on this prior to the call. How are things in construction overall, here in the U.S.?
It's busy, but it's just tough. Like, I'm seeing the cranes the same way, but it's a matter of, okay, is there anyone actually in that seat and actually operating? And if they are doing it now, will they be doing it in the next few years? So yeah, I mean, a lot of different issues going on right now. But this time of year, I'm in Connecticut. This time of year, this is going to be a busy time for construction regardless. It's always going to be busy. There's always going to be projects to be built. There's no shortage of actual construction going on, but there's also no shortage of stress from a lot of the business owners that I'm dealing with. And I joked around with someone yesterday and said, hey, I would love to be about 20 years younger and getting into the construction industry right now, because just seeing how the some of the wage growth and the demand of the skilled trades in general, where they are and where they're going. I mean, it would be great. It'd be great to be in that position, but being that I'm not in that position, in a spot where I'm just trying to help solve problems for a lot of different companies and a lot of different members, and trying to find new and innovative ways for them to get the jobs done and get people on the job.
So, and I also am here in Connecticut, and there's a few sites here that I'm going to pick your brain on off call that are not busy.
Sure.
So they might be acquisition opportunities. They may need
Yeah.
CPACE funding. And Maria, I'm coming to you, and I'm coming back around to economic indicators.
Absolutely.
Cap rates, the gap between our investors and our owners. I mean, the market we're at that, a tipping point, I would say, where investors coming in are nowhere near what the owners want to sell for, and now they're willing to wait. And as I understand it, Anna Maria, you and I were talking about this, CPACE is a good inflationary hedge in that regard. Lending there is still active. I mean, that's growing. And all of which brings me back to the economic indicators of this car wash, Saul. How'd you do in the last quarter compared to prior quarter comparatively?
Better.
I got them on the better. So people are out there spending money, even though realtors are now riding in their clients' cars to save gas.
Well, you got to say at what level, right? Look at the demographic and people, but we're getting a lot more car washes than we got in the past. Now remember, there are limitations, right? Because if an average car wash lasts even if you went 100% occupancy, let's say, there's a limitation on just what that can do. There is a vacancy factor, right? So our effort is to decrease the amount of time that those stalls are empty. And it seems like they're more and more. Those stalls are active and people are using them. And to me, that's a good sign. At least there's activity. It's all about momentum, and moving. And
I just had an interesting thought, and Anna Maria, correct me if I'm wrong. Can Saul upgrade his car wash because go green?
Absolutely.
All CPACE financing in theory, because he's upgrading.
In theory, yeah,
water.
exactly.
That's kind of an interesting thought.
Now listen, here's something where you think about
water conservation measures, and why not add renewable energies to it as well?
So
especially Southern California.
in California now, in San Diego,
mm-hmm.
You can't wash your cars unless you go to a car wash. So they just passed an ordinance that says you have to go to a car wash. Now you love laws like that, right?
You do.
Yeah, you do.
But that's another factor. It's just like, what are the forces, the four great forces that influence value? Physical, social, economic, and political. Those are the four great forces that influence value, right? Physical, social, economic, and political. And so here we have with this very basic kind of business, right? A car wash, where you can actually see those forces affecting the value. And of course, the value then comes out of the cash flow, and cash flow is what everybody buys. And I saw an interesting phrase the other day. It was something like cash flow feeds you, net worth is for bragging, cash flow is for eating. And it had to do with buying a property. If you're going to hold it long term, the rents didn't get cut. Value might have got cut in half, but the rent didn't get cut in half. And so people that buy to hold, even no matter what in the cycles, they typically will do okay. But I thought that was a great phrase, right? Yeah, your net worth's gone down, but net worth is for bragging, and cash flow is for eating.
That's true. There are a lot of developers, owners. The numbers on a lot of these projects, syndication deals, the distributions are going to tighten up. The numbers, the projections aren't going to look as good. But if that cash flow is there, you can fall back and focus on your core and make it through. You just got to tighten your belt, just like Mom and Joe at any of the regular businesses, a car wash. You just reduce expenses.
If I get back to Anna Maria, and you're right. The more that we can do something that can cut the cost, and if that's environmentally friendly at the same time, then that's a no-brainer, right? That's
Absolutely. And that's what we're based on, is it being a no-brainer. And in trying to grow the program nationwide, because it's still kind of in its infancy, with only 10 years behind us, and so it really takes a lot of education on it, to bring it forward so that people feel comfortable with it and find a trust factor in it. Because when something's so new and it almost sounds too good to be true, uh, do I want to take a risk on this? But you're risking more by not trying it out, because, like you said, there are so many different other costs involved, environmental and the green money as well, too. Because why spend all that extra on the utilities and being wasteful? And so, especially for car washes, they're a hot item in the industry actually right now.
I love it. Well, and when you think about it, the easiest way to cut costs is to improve efficiency. So upgrading those machines so that vacuum only goes for 1 minute instead of 2.5 minutes at half the power. That sounds green to me.
Automatically, absolutely. That's what we say about HVAC replacements. Automatically, just by virtue, the units are typically 18 to 25 years old that are getting changed out. And so with the new technologies, they're definitely more energy efficient to begin with. And so just by virtue of changing them out, you're already automatically there.
Back over to you. I know you're back from vacation, and unfair as it is, any big changes, or I want to say like reductions in marketing? Are people starting to pull back on those areas because they're saying, let me focus my funds on the core?
So I haven't seen it yet, but I am doing my third and fourth quarter strategic planning, and part of that is creating a process and a mechanism so that clients can execute their own marketing plans. So we're literally putting packages together now where we can create the plan and create the structure around it, and the chart the progress and check in with them and those sorts of pieces, but that they can self-execute, recognizing that it may be harder for some clients to hire an outside agency or an outside a couple sets of hands to help them.
And that's fantastic. A do-it-yourself toolbox after the fact, sort of
Right.
like, here's your toolbox, follow our process.
Right.
Back to our original discussion as a group, the four of us, Anna Maria, prior to your time, about just rewriting your processes. Let's go back to basics. But we're not rewriting anything. For most of us on this call, we've all been in this space 2008. Saul, you were here prior to.
19.
So,
Not calling you out or anything, Saul.
no, he's the internet evangelist for real estate. I mean, it's a self-proclaimed title. So 92. Let's go 92 and 2008. What, you've seen this before, I imagine. Anything new with technology here that you'd like to point out that's happening with us as real estate professionals, marketers, and financing?
There's lots of you talking real estate finance today. It's interesting,
yeah,
right? So things just kind of move along, and things happen in the background, and all of a sudden people say, when did that happen? And boy, that happened overnight. Can't believe, right? So I would say that there are many things taking place on the mortgage side, and will creep over to the real estate side regarding technologies, transaction efficiencies, visibility, transparency around risk, being able to better grade in the secondary money market. So all those things are happening, and so there are going to be major changes to people without pinpointing. And so what I like to say to people is this question: what's currently possible, and if it were impossible, it fundamentally change the way you do business. And what if certain things that you take for granted that you do today, what if they're not possible tomorrow? Or what if certain things that are not possible today in your business would be possible tomorrow? And look at that regarding technology. And my kind of thoughts about this at least over the last 5 or 6 years, is everything I ever thought would never be is here. And so I can't even for a while I couldn't even imagine science fiction anymore, because anything someone would say to me, I would say, I've seen more bigger deals than that already. Oh, that's nothing. That's nothing. So I kept thinking I can wrap my arms around that science fiction. And what I think I can again. There are things that I'm looking at today that lead me to way out kind of thoughts around these newer technologies. And then some that apply to real basic things. And I'll just jump into one because I think it's critical today. And it's the whole concept of fractionalization. And it's how blockchain affects that. You saw a piece that I published of car wash tokens, right? And people want to talk NFTs, tokens, NFTs, and people don't even know what tokens are. How can they talk about NFTs, non-fungible tokens, when they don't even remember in their mind what a token is and what a token does? And only when you understand that can you begin to understand beyond that. But this idea of fractionalization and the fact that blockchain, you can do many more transactions less expensively, quicker, and what does that entail and what's taking place? And so we've always fractionalized real estate. That's what happens. Somebody buys a piece of property, they subdivide it. When they subdivide it, it increases the value of the individual parcels. Somebody builds on it, right? So the whole idea in real estate's been fractionalization. Corporations are fractionalization, right? So, but it takes a while to process this. So what I'm seeing today is some technologies around fractionalizing certain types of interest in real property around things I never thought would take place before, because people believe that if they do that, there are going to be markets for this. And blockchain is the technology that makes it run. And people say, well, people are going to be priced out of the real estate market. You're not going to be able to buy your home. And maybe the time in which you buy your first home might be later in life than it now is, but there are going to be other opportunities to buy real estate at $25 a piece and some blockchain investment somewhere. It's all happening.
There's a few apps I've come across where you buy a fractional ownership interest in your first, investment property. Not a security, but
right, because
not a security, but really very similar. So yeah, absolutely, fractionalized interest.
And then you look at just us talking to each other like this, and to all kinds of other listeners. Pre-COVID, we weren't doing it as much. And yes, the technology was there, but it's really come such a long way. And especially for like Becca and myself, I'm doing business development and her with the marketing. We get out there and we're kind of all over the place at once. And I remember watching the Jetsons as a kid. Anybody, I may be dating myself, but the Jetsons was my favorite cartoon. And here I love the flying cars, got to admit it. But more than that, I wanted the phone where you could see a person on the other end. And wow, it's come true in my lifetime. So that's pretty awesome.
They have flying cars. They're not mass produced. They do exist too.
And
I want the one that, goes up, parks itself, drives you around, and all that.
It's all going to happen. They're going to geocode from the surface of the earth to 1,000 miles up, and the vehicles will know what quadrants they fly in. It'll be automatic, and there'll be no accidents. You'll get in it. It'll go up. It'll find where it's supposed to go. It'll go there. That's all going to happen.
Yeah.
That'll be great for my retirement. I can have my own driver.
I know on the contractor side of things, the embracing of technology more than anything. It's about. This is for all sorts of different businesses, but from what I see, it's about survival. If they're not embracing all this technology that's out there at this point, it's the difference between, getting on the next job and closing up shop, or passing it on to the next generation, or just calling it a day, or selling it off to someone who's not a family member who is embracing technology. And the same thing even on the marketing side. Becca, you probably see some of this there, and I think I might have mentioned this a few months back, but I'm noticing with the hiring, I'm seeing more companies taking marketing dollars and put it into the HR side of things and into the hiring side to market their companies and market to get that attraction, where they're not necessarily marketing all the work that they do to get more business. They're trying to figure out where to spend their dollars, is it going to go in that direction, or is it going to go in a way of attracting the people that can actually do the work? So when we have the work, we don't get caught with our pants down and not be able to complete the job. It's such an odd, shift. That was the first thing I thought about, Becca, when you mentioned kind of that do-it-yourself type of thing. So they can kind of take that, roll with it to still cover that base, but also cover the base of trying to market their company in a way to attract the right people.
It's very
it's a weird
interesting.
time. It's an interesting time.
It's
for sure.
fascinating that you say that, because I would say over the past 2 months, we've had 4 or 5 clients who've asked us to help them with structuring advertisements for hiring and writing job descriptions. Like, I didn't know, like I used to hire for my old company. And so I've done a lot of job descriptions in my career.
Sure.
I just never thought of it as part of our marketing services. One of my team members has well over a decade in HR experience. So we are adept at that HR piece, but I never thought of it as being part of our business. And suddenly it's become a part of our business because it is that attracting new talent is such a big piece of it. And people are using online platforms to do that. And if we have clients that are already not as adept at some of the online platforms and they need a little bit of hand-holding, well, you better believe they need hand-holding placing the job ad on LinkedIn.
Yeah. And there are a lot of places they're expecting, like the potential employee is expecting the first interview to be like this.
Yeah.
They're not expecting to have to get dressed up and show up at 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning and park at a visitor spot. They're expecting that first and maybe even that second interview. I spoke with a friend of mine earlier, and 3 interviews, and they've all been virtual. And I said, well, where's the job must be farther away. She's like, no, it's like a half hour away. It's in this town. And I was like, where are when are they going to call you in to check all body language? This is going in the back of my head. Body language and the handshake, and I'm like, all right, am I dating myself or what is going on here? But yeah, it's pretty wild. It's pretty wild.
Well, the world today is changing, and you touched on Becca. You touched on something interesting there. And Chris, the people coming in, this crossover or spillover of responsibilities. Almost people are expected to know more and do more, which I don't know. Being a generalist is fantastic and it's important, but Bob McCone's a friend of mine, and specializing in your field, being a specialist and committing yourself to excellence in that field or in that space is also important. So how broad can you really go? I'm seeing the same here. Generalist brokers, generalist everything. I don't think, labor shortage or not, I think that is a contributing factor to this separation between the old school and new school. You can't do it this way.
Well, you talk about the labor, though. People that you hire at different levels, expecting that they have certain technology skills. I think that just comes with the territory, and that's not new. I mean, I remember when we had to say, do you know how to use email? Do you know how to get information off of this? Is true. And do you know how to use Word? Do you know how to use Excel? And people people could say they knew it. We actually had tests when people came in, so we could find out. And then a lot of times people hire and didn't know how to use the things that the people but everybody knows how to use these things now. That businesses adapted and people adapted and adopted based on their needs. And I think it's not anymore. The technologies today are certainly no more difficult. People are certainly more used to using these kinds of things, and they're generational piece. But I think that there is a lot, and there always has been since we started with personal computers back in 1980, whatever.
And the construction side, are people expected to know more? Like a Procore, for instance, is that a trait for labor wise, Chris?
I would say, I mean, there's a whole slew of different programs, and it's a matter of what a particular company might be looking for. Obviously, when you're talking about, things like Procore, that might be a little more of the standard, but there's also companies that are looking for very specific things. And if you have just that niche where, hey, I've used this, I've used that, and you show a little bit of a stable of what you can do, they say, well, if they learn those things, then we could teach them something else. It's funny. So the first when you mentioned back in the day of people not knowing, do you know how to use email and things like that? I remember when I first started working within the school systems, I always got a kick out of the students who would bring in a resume or put in a resume that had someone else's email address on it. The name didn't match. But to your point though, Andreas, yeah, I mean, there's kind of your standard softwares and your standard programs, but also, your other type of elements that, are expected. If you're an electrician, if you're working in HVAC, there's certain pieces of equipment that they want to make sure that, do you know how to use this? Are you proficient in it? How proficient are you in actually learning something new if we're willing to train you on it? Because, by the way, we're going to pay you more than you would have got paid. I mean, there's been like an 8% like wage increase since like 2019 in the construction industry, something like that. So, hey, we're going to pay you more than you would have got paid 6 months to 2 years ago to 3 years ago. So we want to make sure that we're making the right hire of someone that can actually pick this stuff up and go. And if you actually know this stuff to begin with, that's going to make it a little bit easier for us to write that check every couple of weeks.
Well, and even in our small pace industry that's very new, there are folks putting together different programs for consolidating bids, proposals, and term sheets, and comparing programs across the nation, and what those qualifications and requirements are, for example. And so, there are kind of very specific areas and niches where you can see more of this advancement as well.
Sure.
Well, and CPACE itself is a newer product. It's a whole new segment to lending, to capital. Has construction helped you get the word out? Has helped you grow this much further and faster, not in comparison to, let's say, a Realtor.com or another legislation, another product? Would you say that that's true? You were doing property management before?
I've seen a huge growth in the new construction arena with CPACE being used a lot more as that gap filler in the capital stack. And so, although originally the original premise for CPACE was to help aging building stock get improved and become more energy efficient, and to be available to the small commercial property owner as well as a large developer or et cetera. So it's kind of branched out in different ways, and that all is necessity based, and so one thing that we are seeing lately as far as trends, deals are beginning to take a little longer again. At first it was COVID. Now it's the fact that, even though some of the supply chain issues have resolved in the construction industry, but there still are some. There still are many. But it's just that the construction process is taking longer. And correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, maybe you're seeing some of these same trends as well. And so this has been really, stretching out our deal time as far as, what we're seeing for CPACE. And I'm sure that it affects other aspects of the industry as well.
Absolutely. And Chris, jump in at any time. The many deals from everyone I'm talking with, architects, developers, you hit it right on the head. It's no longer a supply shortage. It's no longer, and to this conversation, it's not even a labor shortage. From what I'm hearing, it's this extended time that was brought on first by the supply shortage, now by the labor shortage, and now with the inflation increase in rates, all of these deals are kind of like stuck. And that was what I alluded to earlier, is plenty of sites here with cranes on them, back to your point, but there's nobody in them. They're just there. And the investment groups are here and we're kind of talking, and all of a sudden we're just miles apart, which is my biggest concern as a broker in the area is, all right, well, if we can't make a deal, and there's no movement here. These are going to stay empty. And then what are we going to do? We're going to start to have a depressed area. Lights off is detrimental to all of the tenants, empty centers. Unless you're in Shelton, which is doing fantastic. Come to Shelton, call me. We love this market. Go ahead.
No, one thing that I'm seeing, I know we talked about, I think I mentioned this back a couple of months ago. One thing that I'm seeing is the school projects. So the colleges and those projects, those are active. They're very active. The contracts are very strict, and they need to get these things done while the students are gone for the summer. And there's, state money, and there's federal money, and there's other money wrapped up there. So I see the schools at least in my area, and I don't necessarily know about the middle schools or high schools. I'm talking more of the college campuses that I'm driving through, or that larger, the ones that you're going to drive through on a regular basis, where you're going to see these things. They're not on the back roads like maybe some of the high schools or middle schools, but those college campuses seem to be very active. I've spoken to a bunch of people that have been on those jobs that aren't necessarily members that I deal with every day. Literally, I'm starting conversations with people while I'm grabbing my coffee in the morning to find out what's going on over at Wesleyan in Middletown, what's going on over down at Yale and New Haven, what's going on at these places, University of Hartford, all these different places. And they're busy because these contracts need to get fulfilled. Now, a lot of these companies know that money's there, they're getting that money. It's either been paid to them or it's going to get paid to them. The checks are good. So it's pulling people off of their, some of their smaller jobs and some of those jobs that you're talking about, where there is that balance of, well, we're not going to get these parts over there for another 6 months anyway. So we might as well put these people on the campus and have them let's knock this job out, because the colleges are always going to have jobs going on. When I was younger, I used to joke and say, yeah, I go to Yale every year. I go to Yale every summer. People thought I was, trying, like I was a student. I was like, no. I did commercial hardwood floors for years. There's always going to be stuff going on at the colleges, and in the school system, much like healthcare, construction, you're just as good as your last job. So if you show and prove at those positions, those GCs are going to bring back you as a sub. Those people who are working in those UConn, Yale, all these different schools, they're going to bring you back as a CM or a GC. If you get the job done, you're going to continue to get work at those schools. So it all of a sudden it becomes a much more of a priority-based situation to make sure they can get a check to pay their employees, to keep their employees. Because if you have a project manager who's not happy and not getting paid, they're going to find somewhere else to go. They could have multiple offers.
What is the real difference between those college jobs and say, an elementary school, or what? It's where the money comes from. Right. You've got more private infusion. You've got tuition being paid on the one end, and on the other, you've got a public scenario in most cases, and that is where CPACE finds its in the private institutions, because it's the private investment in private projects that we're dealing with. And so, I do see the difference in those two segments, and why you see that market difference in jobs getting done as well.
Absolutely.
So I used to know people that were tradespeople, right? But they ran their own businesses. I had a very good friend who was a plaster, right? Mm-hmm. And he owned his own business, and he passed the business on to his son, and he built up of people who would hire him. He built a book of business. Mm-hmm. And so it sounds, because there's such a shortage of skilled labor today, it sounds like maybe this is a good time for an entrepreneur, and maybe not, but for somebody who wants to build their own business as a plasterer, as a carpenter, as a trade skillsman, and build their own little business and work for general. This might be a time to build that kind of book of business, because there's such a shortage.
Absolutely. I've seen some really, really good, there's some really good stories of people doing that around here that I've seen. Young electricians, very young electricians, very young, drywall You know, they know how to do it. They decided to grab onto it. And then there was first thing that popped into mind. There's a caulking company, and they're just, you know, they're known to be really, really good. So they could basically pick and choose their jobs, and they've built such a strong business. I actually spoke to the son about a month ago, and I was happy to hear that he's taking it on. And he's gonna do fine. He's gonna make boku money and do great as long as he keeps his head in the game. And it's gonna be more technology based with him coming into play, you know.
Just because he's younger and he has the wherewithal or his background. But what you're saying is we should all go into construction.
Let's do it.
So why do you have a labor shortage? There's something else here.
Yeah. Well,
skilled labor in particular. That's what's hard to replace, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's a fair point.
The skilled labor side is just hard to replace. I mean, I spent over 10 years in the schools talking to students, and I mean, I was just speaking to someone yesterday who had to let a couple people go last week because he didn't plan on it, but basically he went down to a site and they were already gone.
Lunchtime?
And it wasn't Friday. It was Thursday at 3:00, and they were they decided to take off. And then he already knows that part of the reason is because they want to get off an hour earlier, so they have an extra hour of free time. Literally, this is what they're saying too. And then another one wants to be able to. It just doesn't work that way. You got to unfortunately stay till the job is done. And it is what it is. Like I said, I used to be in those spaces and be on those job sites, and there were times where we'd get be able to knock off early and maybe get home a little bit. There'd be times where you're staying there a certain time. It's just it's that skilled the interest there is really just wavering right now as to what they actually want to do. A younger person, what they actually want to do.
Well, so you mentioned something interesting there about I need an hour of free time. Work-life balance is incredibly important.
Absolutely.
I did not do this very well for a long time, but the last 2 years have been great. That's an inside joke. My wife's watching; she better be. So work-life balance, and it especially now, trying times. 40 hours is really 60 hours. At least in real estate, apparently 40 is 30 in construction, and I'm really going to go hang sheetrock after this call, potentially. At least a couple days a week. So, labor shortage, this new generation, the retail, what I'm hearing similar to your, I need 1 hour of my time is I'm not going to do that because I don't feel like doing it. That I can't do that right now. That's it. You're my employee. You're going to do it because I need you to do it. No, I don't do that. Ask somebody else. Which boggles me. Like when you show up to work, you're there to get things done. Whatever needs to get done, you get done. I'll never forget it. My first restaurant I worked in ever, guys in a suit and tie, 9 celebrities out front. The owner, he's washing dishes in the back. Why? Because he owned the place and it had to get done. Whatever you do, you just get in there and do it. Although, as Becca pointed out, we've got all these generalists doing everything, but unwilling to do certain things, as Chris said, or taking off early. What can we do, or what do we do now? I mean, finance is in the same boat, assumably. Are you guys having the same I'm sorry, I don't want to say generational change. This shift in work dynamic?
Hey, wait, before you go, I want to give you
You want to jump in?
Yeah, I want to jump in on this life balance thing.
Life balance. From not Hawaii. John's
I think it's totally overrated. The only person that should be able to tell you that you need a life balance is your spouse, your partner, not anybody else. Because if you're in business and you're trying to build a business, if you're not at a point in your life where you have enough put away so that you better be working day in and day out. That's the nature of it. You know what? You get rewarded for your efforts. If you're in construction or real estate or something, that's one of the reasons you're in it, because you get rewarded for your efforts. And if that means you work 7 days a week, you do what it takes. It relates to what you just said. You do what it takes to get the job done. It doesn't matter what your generation is. You do although we know that maybe that's a factor these days, but you do it. And life balance is great, but it's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And you just can't, life balance isn't the number one thing that you put on the list, right? You got to eat. You got to breathe and you got to eat. and those have high priority.
Oh,
The other
Right.
side of it with the my next question for that person who mentioned the 1 hour off was, okay, well, I have a quick question for you. What's the quality of work when they are working? And they kind of, and I'm like, that's your answer right there. They weren't ready to do it in the first place. If they
Right.
weren't doing the job in the first place, then who cares if you give them an hour off or 8 hours off? But you're gonna have to go find somebody else. And even going back to the marketing for some of these positions, I've seen some of the marketing for some positions at this point, and it's making it seem like a dream, a dream. And I mean, let's just be honest. I mean, there's, this is a whole other conversation, but suicide prevention is a huge thing in construction as well. And it's like you got this dream job. Here's how it's going to be, and then someone finally slides into it, and it's not what they're like. I feel like the people that I see being successful are the people that are being very realistic with the people that they sit in front of them and say, here's the deal. You're working from this time to this time. We're going to pay you handsomely, but this is what is expected, and this is rigorous. And there's things, the biggest issue, like I said before, is just that interest, that real interest of having someone walk in who might be a little bit younger to say, you know what, I'm clean, I'm eager, I'm ready to go. And maybe someone who's a little more seasoned going, listen, I don't get into trouble. I'm clean. I'm sober. Here I go. I'm ready. And there's just those people are at a much smaller percentage in availability than, let's say, I mean, I'm just throwing a number 30, 40 years ago, the group that's retiring from that now.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. I mean, spending my time in the school, I'm not completely. I could give different theories, but I don't have any data to back it up. I don't. Saul, you're the data guy, so
it's kind of obvious, right? So we're seeing manifestations of things, something, right? We're experiencing the manifestation of something. If we examine the data, we could probably figure it out.
Yeah.
But
And
the
why
data's
would
there.
why would I
Sorry.
want to do? Why would I want to put in 150,000 light fixtures over a 3-year period when I can do some sort of TikTok video and go viral and get advertising money.
Yeah, that's like California.
I don't blame them.
That's California Gold Rush thing. Yeah, we can go viral, but it's like how many of those people that came to California to dig gold didn't find any?
Well, now you're talking setting expectations, right?
Yeah.
Expectation setting, which is across all our industries, marketing, especially in finance. If you show up to work or at the end of the day on that deal, and you've shifted the numbers 10%, it doesn't happen.
No, absolutely. And but one thing I've noticed, and looking at most people, okay, we're talking about, those who aren't as hungry in all senses of the words, quote unquote, or those, who aren't as, I'm
Driven?
at a loss for words. Right. Exactly. But when you've got honest, hardworking people that are really doing their absolute best, you've got single parents or parents of young children who have had to, during this whole COVID period, look after their children, and and if you had multiple different grade levels and managing their education online, and I know we're a little past that, but I think some people are still having some PTSD from all of this additional stress and work put out by trying to manage everything at once. And so I think really there's we just need to account for, and Chris, you brought up about suicides and whatnot, and I think mental health issues, just in general, trying to lead people in leadership positions, trying to understand their individual employees and understand what they're going through, and can shed a little bit of light and, maybe cut slack on a certain day, but I know those same people are really willing to give it all, on a different day and more than all. And so, it's a question of just keeping in mind that these things are still going on and we're still suffering some repercussions from recent times. And now, we just get over one stress of health issues, and now you're into another stress of inflationary times. And, and it seems like it's just cavalcading and there's no breather rest in between kind of thing.
Crisis to crisis
I
feeling.
agree that all of that, that's all true. And there's always been crisis to another crisis. We don't have to go back and name them. We've all lived through them, right? There's all been these stressful periods of time in our life. And COVID was a very stressful time, but so was World War II, so was the war in Vietnam, so was the assassination of John. I mean, there's we all have those throughout, and it just seems like people need a little bit more coddling, not right or wrong. It just seems, and that's what you're saying, that you want people to be a little bit more aware and to give, and if it's possible, I always thought, and we always taught this, that our most valuable assets were really our employees.
Yes.
And we always did the very best we could to understand our employees, because we put a lot of money into our employees. And as a matter of fact, often our employees couldn't match the salaries that we gave them anywhere else because they were worth it to us, and what they were worth to us, they weren't worth to anybody else. Right? So I think that a good employer and a good leader knows that they're going to give a certain amount of space to people just because it's smart business to do it. And then if you can add the human touch on top of it, it makes it better. But I think we're always going to be confronted with, it's not going to end.
No.
It's going to keep going.
Well, and so speaking of the flag of crisis after crisis, excuse me, what should each of us expect here? And now that we're coming into this recession, what are the expectations from your clients, Becca, that you're seeing? What's the expectation? Just your baseline benchmark. We're mid-year. What's the expectation given COVID, given everyone else, and then around the room, and please, from the different segments of the industry?
So the majority of my clients are really hopeful, actually, because uncertainty does breed opportunity. And so many of my clients are seeing opportunities. I have I did yet another pitch earlier this week for launching a retail store to a much broader audience. I have had 3 or 4 very important website calls for clients who are ready to expand their businesses, because I do think the 2-year kind of hiatus from expansion is now hitting that critical point, that tipping point in their businesses where either they're going to grow or they're not. so they're choosing growth. So even though we have so much uncertainty, even though we are at a time of difficulty in hiring, labor, materials, all of those areas, my clients overall and across the board are continuing to move forward in their
expectation business. Is growth. We're going to do better than the prior.
Growth
is actually growth.
Yeah.
Despite it all, with the right expectations, and things move forward. And that's where I sit here on the brokerage side. The expectation is find deals. We expect deal flow either way. The cap rates might be apart. Maybe CPACE will help shore that up money-wise. But for CPACE, there were the different grant programs to take advantage of. We'll see. And Maria, your clients, the people you're out talking to, the expectation is to close these out.
They're very hopeful. In fact, just piggybacking on what Becca said about, now coming out of this post-COVID era, they're wanting to do projects. They're wanting to go more green. We're getting more inquiries than ever before. And, and so hopefully this will lead, to that next deal, to that closing more deals this year than before. And so we're hopeful as well, and seeing the hope in our clients. And that's a very important piece.
So from your two sides, nobody's slowing down, just doubling down, speed up. We're all hopeful, despite, as you so aptly put it, labor, Let's see. Supply, labor. Did we leave anything out? What is it?
Oh, I
Is it
left out
important?
inflation and recession
Inflation, yeah.
and increasing interest rates and all of those
Yeah.
pieces. So I think
Volatility.
they take longer,
Which is a trend.
but people don't want to stop doing them. How's that?
The people don't. Well, we can't, right? God, the only direction God gives us is forward. So, and Sal, on a more macro level, is the expectations change for realtors, from even the technology owners you talk with, and ICE, or we're just still going speed ahead?
No, I think everything is still on track. I think people are hopeful. Real estate values, there's not going to be a bubble burst kind of thing. It's all local. So I think people are hopeful for the most part. People I talk to that really understand finance, when I ask them how it's going to be, what they tell me is we've never been here before. And so we can talk about whatever we want to talk about, but the fact is we've never, and what they mean by that is we've never been to a point where there was so much quantitative easing and the necessity for quantitative tightening came about at the same time that an increase in interest rates came about. And so that puts us in a space where we've never been, because we have the leftover of 2008 and we have the need of today, and that's a spot that they just can't judge. So while we're hopeful on the one side, on the other side, we're still looking very carefully at the financial markets and what might take place there, because we just don't know, because we've never been there before. I
wish I had led with this question 30 minutes ago, because you just left me thinking on some things. We've never been there before.
Never been there before.
Chris, from the construction side, is the expectation change? I mean, can they just not finish projects? Or could you tell me which projects are not finishing, and I'll show up?
See if you could just pop in.
With Anna Maria.
Yeah, there you go. Well, I'm seeing a lot of contractors, especially on the subcontractor level. There's going back to 2008, the ones who have been around, or the ones who were around back then, they're kind of like, hey, here we go again. And they have that. There's no lack of stress, and there's no lack of ups and downs and ebbs and flows when it comes to any industry, and especially in the construction industry. So there's still an idea of hope. I mean, I see a lot of the contractors starting to share labor when they can a little bit more, working together. I see some of the older generation kind of passing it down to the kids, or passing it down to the next generation, with the idea of the next generation understanding that they need to run the business a little bit differently. I'm seeing a lot of different mergers. I'm seeing, companies let go of maybe one side of what they do, but holding on to, another side that they consider their bread and butter. So, I mean, I guess at the end of the day, we'll get through it, and, just got to kind of take everything as it comes, and, and just kind of keep riding along. I've had very few companies that I deal with that have turned around and say, we're out, we're selling, and we're done. And then I've had others that have found ways to kind of sell off, parts of their business if they need to. And I've seen others, like I said, they're sharing labor. The nice thing is, there's a lot of, even though there is a shortage, there are a lot of people going into apprenticeship programs. The problem is the number is so high that it's estimated to take about 14 years to train the skilled tradespeople that can handle, the 650,000 plus spots that are open. But you got to start somewhere. So, and you can't just keep hammering that number into people's heads over and over and over again. You're not just going to flip a coin. To Saul's point, this isn't going to happen overnight either. It's not going to be an overnight thing where all of a sudden we're like, all right, we're good. Found a $500,000 last night. We're good to go. It's just, it is what it is. So just hanging in there. Everyone's hanging in there, and I'll just keep trying to solve problems for the companies I work with.
grinding it out, for lack. Well, I find that to be the right term. Onward and upward, and moving through the basics. It sounds like precision and clearing the noise, as always, is really selling off of different functions is interesting, because that goes back to my point about being specialists, not generalists. So I like that one. I do appreciate that. I do want to mention to our listeners, we got to the top of the hour quite quickly here. In-person events, CRETech New York is coming in October. Also, ICSC Chicago. For CRETech, because you've tuned in to listen to me speak, to listen to my great hosts and wonderful friends talk about their unique sides of the business, we have 20% off for anyone looking to sign up, exclusive to us, in partnership with CRETech. It's a great in-place gathering where you're going to hear from both VCs and prop tech companies. Prop tech being CRECo and all the others. All this tech everyone alludes to on this call, but we never go in deep about it because that's not what the call is for. So do check that out. And I want to thank Rebekah and Maria, Chris, Saul for coming, joining, sharing what you know, putting up with my microphone issues at times. I think the audio was great this month. Matter of fact, a little too good on my end. I'm hearing everything. That being said, I want to thank our listeners and Mr. Mendoza, our producer, as he leads us out. Please don't forget to check us out on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. Like, rate, and review us, and join us not just next month as scheduled, but third week of this month, we're going to talk all things debt with Inland Mortgage, Art Rendeck. And joining us in August, we have Dan Wagner coming back to join this roundtable group and talk all things commercial real estate. Guys, I want to thank you, Mr. Mendoza. You want to lead us out here?